Hellenistic religion is any of the various systems of beliefs and practices of the people who lived under the influence of ancient Greek culture during the Hellenistic period around 300 BC. The Greek gods continued to be worshipped and the same rites were practiced as before. The only change came from the addition of new religions from other countries, including the Egyptian deities Isis and Serapis, and the Syrian gods Atargetis and Hadad. Magic was practiced widely, and this too was a continuation from earlier times. Throughout the Hellenistic world, people would consult oracles and use charms and figurines to deter misfortune or to cast spells. Also developed in this era was the complex system of astrology, which sought to determine a person's character and future in the movements of the sun, moon and planets. Central to Greek religion in classical times were the 12 Olympian deities headed by Zeus. Religious practice would also involve the worship of heroes, people who were regarded as semi-divine. Such heroes ranged from the mythical figures in the epics of Homer to historical people such as the founder of a city. Magic was a central part of Greek religion, and oracles would also allow people to determine divine will in the rustles of leaves, the shapes of a flame, smoke on an altar, the flight of birds, the noises made by a spring, or in the entrails of an animal. Also long established were the Eleusinian Mysteries.
The Eleusinian Mysteries were initiations held every year for the cult of Demeter and Persephone based at Eleusis in ancient Greece. They are the most famous of the secret religious rites of ancient Greece. Their basis was an old agrarian cult, and there is some evidence that they were derived from the religious practices of the Mycenaean period. The mysteries represented the myth of the abduction of Persephone from her mother Demeter by the king of the underworld Hades, in a cycle with 3 phases: the descent, the search, and the ascent. It was a major festival during the Hellenic era, and later spread to Rome.
The rites, ceremonies and beliefs were kept secret and constantly preserved from antiquity. Some scholars believe that the power and longevity of the Eleusinian Mysteries, a consistent set of rites, ceremonies and experiences that spanned 2 millennia, came from psychedelic drugs. One line of thought by modern scholars has been that the mysteries were intended to elevate man above the human sphere into the divine and to assure his redemption by making him a god and so conferring immortality upon him. Comparative study shows parallels between these Greek rituals and similar systems like the Phrygian Carbarian Mysteries. British author John Grimsby contends that the presence of ergot in the stomachs of some of the Iron Age human remains from peat bogs in Europe is indicative of use of ergot in ritual drinks in a prehistoric fertility cult akin to the Eleusinian Mysteries cult of ancient Greece. In his book Beowulf and Grendel, he argues that the Anglo-Saxon poem Beowulf is based on a memory of the quelling of this fertility cult by followers of Odin. He writes that Beowulf, which translates as barley wolf, suggests a connection to ergot, which in German was known as tooth of the wolf, to reference his berserker state. Kaikon is the beverage consumed by participants in the ancient Greek cult of Eleusinian Mysteries. This might have been based on hallucinogenics from ergot and lysergic acid dimethylate, also known as LSD, which is a potent hallucinogenic which was first synthesized from ergot alkaloids by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann in 1938. It is widely supposed that the rites inside comprised 3 elements. Combined, these 3 elements were known as the unrepeatables. The penalty for divulging them was death.
Athenagoras of Athens, Cicero, and other ancient writers cite that it was for this crime that Diagoras was condemned to death in Athens. The tragic playwright Aeschylus was allegedly tried for revealing secrets of the mysteries in some of his plays, but was acquitted. The ban on divulging the core ritual of the mysteries was thus absolute, which is probably why we know almost nothing about what transpired there. Aeschylus was an ancient Greek playwright. He is often described as the father of tragedy. Only 7 of his estimated 70 to 90 plays have survived. The Persians, 7 against Thebes, the Suppliants. The trilogy known as the Orchestra, consisting of the 3 tragedies Agamemnon, the Libation Bearers, and the Eumenides. Together with Prometheus Bound, 7 against Thebes being the final play in an Oedipus trilogy. Scholars have suggested several completely lost trilogies. A number of these trilogies treated myths surrounding the Trojan War. Other suggested trilogies touched on the myth of Jason and the Argonauts, the life of Perseus, the birth and exploits of Dionysus, and the aftermath of the war portrayed in 7 against Thebes, Sons of the Seven. Aeschylus continued his emphasis on the polis with the Suppliants in 463 BC, which pays tribute to the democratic undercurrents running through Athens in advance of the establishment of a democratic government in 461. In the play, the Danaids, the 50 daughters of Danaus, founder of Argos, flee a forced marriage to their cousins in Egypt. They turn to King Pelasgus of Argos for protection, but Pelasgus refuses until the people of Argos weigh in on the decision. A distinctly democratic move on the part of the king. The people decide that the Danaids deserve protection, and they are allowed within the walls of Argos despite Egyptian protests.
In Greek mythology, Pelasgus was the ancestor of the Pelasgians, the mythical inhabitants of Greece, who established the worship of the Dodonian Zeus, Hephaestus, and the Cabiri, and other divinities. In the different parts of the country once occupied by the Pelasgians, there existed different traditions as to the origin and connection of Pelasgus. The ancient Greeks even used to believe that he was the first man. In the Iliad, Homer characterized the Pelasgians as brave fighters. To fight the war, they migrated from the Balkan Peninsula into Asia Minor. The Pelasgians fought against the tribes of Greeks in the War of Troy. Pelasgus fought alongside Dardanians and other allies defending the wall and the city of Troy.
The myth of the outlandish and savage 7 who threatened the city has traditionally seemed to be based on Bronze Age history in the generation before the Trojan War, whose very names vary. Some have their own identity, like Amphiaraus the Seer, a suggestion made by Ernest Howald in 1939 that the 7 are pure myth led by Adrastos on his magic horse. 7 demons of the underworld. Burkett draws parallels in an Akkadian epic text, the story of Era the plague god, and the 7, Sabiti, called upon to destroy mankind, but who withdraw from Babylon at the last. The city is saved when the brothers simultaneously run each other through. Samuel too, but each seized his opponent by the forelock and thrust his sword into his side so that all fell together. The mythic theme passed into Etruscan culture. A 5th century bronze mirrorback is inscribed with Polynices and Eteocles running at one another with drawn swords. The Egyptian religion which follows Isis was the most famous of the new religions. The religion was brought to Greece by Egyptian priests, initially for the small Egyptian communities in the port cities of the Greek world. Although the Egyptian religion found only a small audience among the Greeks themselves, her popularity spread under the Roman Empire, and Diodorus Siculus wrote that the religion was known throughout almost the whole inhabited world.